Hey everyone, we're live, pal. Andrew, it is the anniversary show, 1 year since you and me and Denise Salcedo started. We're live, pal. And we're going to have a guest on this show in a second here. Our very first guest on the first episode. He probably doesn't even remember that. But Andrew, how do you feel today? How do you feel on the anniversary of the show?
Denise, I feel like we started the show. It was three of us, and one of them got the best idea ever, and to totally abandon ship and take off into greater things. So I think we're the two guys that have, we're kind of falling behind against, Hollywood Salcedo here. But listen, man, 1 year, and I got to tell you, we went into this really not knowing each other, just like we knew each other on the internet. We're very different people, very different lives, but the first time we went on the air, and I'm no BSing here, honestly. Like, I'm big on chemistry. I'm big on energy. I may look like some sort of thick neck from Queens, very unsophisticated and rough around the edges, but I very much believe in connecting with people and energy and things like that. And I got to tell you, man, the first time we did a show, I was like, oh man, this is great. I think you came on my show, or I went on yours. It was one of them, and I was like, man, this kind of feels right.
We did the home and home thing. I think we did. Initially, part of my interest in doing this show, like, look, we can do a number of different podcasts, right? But the reason to do it is to do it with people who you're interested in working with. And that was the main thing for me. It was like, Andrew, I really enjoy Andrew. Denise, I love Denise. I always sort of tease her, but like, even before she came on F4W and started working here on this network, I had reached out to her because I wanted to interview her, because I was like, man, like, she's doing so well. And then, like, literally, like, the next week, Bryan hit me up and he's like, what do you think about Denise? I was like, oh, I just interviewed her. She's awesome. Not saying she's the reason why she's moving and shaking, but I just found it so funny how, like, this all kind of worked together at the same time to bring us together. And
no, it was great. It totally worked out. Yeah, totally worked out. Like the show that I do with Rich, that was so natural because it's just us at the bar. It's the same conversation we have at the bar. Yeah, we are like brothers. Yeah, we make a couple dick jokes at each other, and then we giggle for like the next 45 minutes. That's the show. So doing this with you, like, it's transition. It's hard to explain to people. Like, doing this for like 15 years, and you know who was a great explanation? When I was talking to Will Washington when he came on the show, I had no idea. He's been doing this for like 15 years, podcasting.
Yep.
And him and I were talking off the air, and we were like, my God, like, just the chemistry that we had on the show, it's not something that happens too often. Like, sometimes you just fill in with someone, and I'm not saying I'm great. I'm not saying you're great. I mean, you are great, but I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is sometimes you just need to kind of connect with those people that connect with you. And you know what? Luckily for us, man, the show, 1 year we've been doing it pretty consistently, unless, something happens, like I break a hip or something.
Stuff happens. I'll be going on vacation for 2 weeks, which I'll probably be unable to do the show in sometime in July. And so, maybe we go dark for 2 weeks, or maybe you find someone to jump on and do it. But ultimately, for a show that was brand new, I mean, you got all of the logos created. We got the art created for the podcast. This podcast feed is now free. We are no longer behind the paywall. So if anybody wants to subscribe to this show, they could. But we've been for a year. It didn't feel like a year, but the growth in what we're doing has been nice to see. It doesn't mean that, that we're the largest podcast out there in any way, but when you put some effort into something and you see a little bit of output there, you see a little bit of result, it just makes you want to do it more. And for me, I remember we did the first show. I think you hosted maybe the first or the first few shows.
I hosted, and I told you I don't want to do it. I want you to. You're such a better host with this kind of format. I was like, dude, you got to do it. You got to host.
No, and so ultimately, I took that on as a challenge, right? Because I'm like, okay, the reason why Andrew is like, hey, do you want to do it? Is because it's actually kind of hard, especially when there was 3 people.
Very.
Now it's not hard because it's just the 2 of us, unless we have a guest on. But really, that was a challenge for me. I was like, okay, I'm going to host this show. I'm going to create the rundown. I'm going to spit out the topics. I'm going to work with producer John, and so he knows exactly what we're talking about, so we can then put those segments up on YouTube in separate clips. And so that whole process of it is a challenge and it's fun and it's kind of hard. It's not easy to constantly come up with new things, especially because you and I do more than one show and you don't want to repeat the same topics, right? But thankfully, your show with me is much different than the same show that I would do with Dave or the same show that I would do with John LaRocca, my co-host on the Fight Game podcast. So it's different enough to where I feel like we don't really say the same things. And I think in this industry, it's very easy to get caught up in talking about the same thing over and over because it's what you know. But we've been able to make this show pretty different than some of the other podcasts, especially on this network. Because, I mean, when Bryan, who's going to join us here in a second, and I think he's actually on with us, Bryan does like 10 shows a week. Imagine him trying to figure out, like, that's got to be a challenge for him. We might as well ask him. Let's bring on Bryan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay, there you are.
Excellent. Wow, look at that.
So,
Bryan, where are you?
I'm in Cannon Beach, Oregon.
Oh, very cool.
Yes.
So you probably don't even remember, but you were our very first guest. And since that year has gone by, you've done 500 shows. But so we were just talking about, because you have to host a show, a daily show, where you come up with different topics every day. Like sometimes, you know, there are stories that are big enough to where maybe they do cross over a few days. But how do you come up with the rundown of doing a single show every day? Is it just because there's so much stuff to talk about in wrestling, or is there something that you've sort of built in to your creative process to where you know how to do this?
Well, I mean, it's funny because I mentioned this on a show a few days ago. When I first started Figure 4 Weekly in 1995, I did one newsletter, and I was going to do the newsletter every week. And I did the one newsletter, and then when I was done writing it, I thought, what's going to happen if there's no news next week? Like, what am I going to write about? And then I very quickly realized that there's always going to be news. So if I did a show in the morning, and then I did a show in the evening, guaranteed I can have different things to talk about on the morning show and the evening show because so much happens in wrestling. Like I did the show today. We talk about Raw, and we talked about all of the news that took place since noon yesterday, which is a lot of stuff that happened. And then, you know, if I did a show with Dave tonight, I mean, we could talk about NXT because NXT will have aired, and guarantee there's going to be more news in the next 12 hours. So I've never, you know, there's days where it's slower than other days, and there's days where it's busier than other days, but the days never come where there's like nothing to talk about. There's always something to talk about.
So let's actually talk about Forbidden Door, because my sense is there is some frustration with the build, and this is just coming from a lot of the places where I am on the internet. A little bit unhappy with some of the matches, maybe the build. Obviously, AEW is dealing with a bunch of injuries at the same time. But Bryan, as somebody who's talking about this a lot, what is your sense of the build? Do you like the build of the show? Do you think that there's things that they could do better? Are you ultimately sort of happy going into this this weekend with what they've done so far?
Well, you know, before I came on, you were talking about the tendency to talk about the same thing over and over.
Right.
And I do a lot of shows, and I hate repeating something that I said on another show. But the problem is it's practically impossible to not repeat things. And when you ask this question, I have to repeat something that I've said a million times, which is the day that this show was announced, I talked to somebody there who's you know, fairly high up, and they said, like, fans guaranteed are going to be disappointed that they're not going to get this match, they're not going to get this dream match, and they're not going to get those matches. But when the show's over, I think that they're going to be very happy with the show. And that's what I heard on day one. That's what I believe today. I think when Forbidden Door is over, it's going to end up having been like a great wrestling show. But you're not going to get those matches that you dreamed of. There's too much politics involved. There's you know, the normal New Japan AAA politics. There's New Japan and AEW, which they're working together, but each side has guys that they don't want to lose to somebody else. And so you've got to say, okay, these are the guys I don't care if you beat. These are the guys I don't want you to beat. Okay, well, now we have to put these guys together. As noted, there's going to be injuries. I don't think the Bryan Danielson-Zack Sabre Jr. match is going to happen. So that one's, I mean, they could, tomorrow maybe he'll get cleared, but I was kind of given the impression today that it's probably not going to happen on the show. So yeah, you're gonna have that. And as far as the build goes, you know, we had a guest host on last week. We've had Lance on, and both of them said the same thing, which is I don't watch a lot of New Japan. And I watch Dynamite, and I see these people, and I'm like, who is this? What is going on? Who are these people? And you're going to have the issue the first year. Because as we've talked about a million times, the way New Japan books, they're not going to go beyond whatever their next show is. So until that Dominion show happened, I mean, you can't start the build to Forbidden Door until Dominion's over. And it was the same thing with AEW and Double or Nothing. So they've had like 3-4 weeks to put this entire thing together. And that, by the way, is not like a normal pay-per-view. You have to introduce new characters. You have to get New Japan people on the show. You have to, get them involved with the current AEW guys to set up matches. So the first year was invariably going to be like this. There's going to be a lot of people on TV that fans, they're not going to know who the Great O'Khan is. They're not going to know who Jeff Cobb is. Some of them aren't even going to know who like Tanahashi is. They don't watch New Japan. When we have another year of AEW and New Japan working together, and then a year from now, you start doing the build towards Forbidden Door, and now it's guys that you know this guy, you know that guy. I think it's going to be a lot better next year. I think this is just going to be a tough year for all of those reasons.
Andrew, you and I haven't talked a ton about Forbidden Door because we were off last week, but we're getting ready. This is the go home show on Wednesday, leading into this pay-per-view, which there was just a pay-per-view last month. So this is the first time AEW's done, back-to-back months with a show. What is your feeling? Like, is it as easy, if you weren't doing this, would it be as easy to plop down your $50 for this show?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a huge wrestling fan, so I'm gonna watch it anyway. I think some of the disappointment comes from, obviously, like Brian said, everybody has these fantasy dream matches that they want to see happen. Tanahashi and CM Punk would have been a first time, like, never could possibly happen type match that was going to headline this, and then everything else would have been secondary. I think my disappointment in the show is that I thought every match was going to be a New Japan versus AEW match, and that's not what we're going to get. There's a lot of other matches in between here. Like Tony Storm, Thunder Rosa, right? Like, I understand they couldn't do, New Japan doesn't have a women's division, but you could have done something else that was a little unique there. I don't know. Am I disappointed? No, because it's going to be a fantastic show, right? Match quality is going to be great. Watching it is going to be a lot of fun. Injuries kind of played a part in this. Hopefully Danielson announced tomorrow that him and Zack Sabre Jr. are in a match. And that'll kind of make it better. But, this is the first one of these. And I anticipate that with the success of this, they'll do a couple more. And then we'll eventually get that Okada, whoever dream match. But the fact that Okada's not on it says a lot here.
Okay, so that's interesting because...
Or on it yet.
On it. So, there is a rumor out there that they could turn this thing into a four-way. And that might not even be rumor, and that might just be people trying to put two and two together. But Andrew and I will probably end the show talking a little bit more about Forbidden Door, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the stuff around what's going on with WWE right now. And obviously last night, Dave and Brian talked about Bruce Pritchard basically taking over for Johnny Ace, who is on leave. Ultimately, like Brian, does Vince just trust like 2 people or 3 people in the whole company? Like, to add more stuff to this guy's plate is I'm looking at it as somebody who works for a company and sees how, you kind of build the hierarchy of your executive team. Like, this is just like, giving an executive somebody else's job. Now they have twice as much work. Like, this seems so ridiculous.
Well, yeah. Once again, to repeat my material from that show, I mean, whether it's the main event scene or your whole corporate environment, they have no plans. They have no foresight. Randy Orton goes down, which, by the way, Randy Orton, even in that spot, he's been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
He was going to headline SummerSlam. And I like Randy Orton, but dude, it's time for somebody new. That guy goes down. They got nobody. Oh,
yeah,
who
no, Brian.
Brock Lesnar.
Brian, they got another guy from 20 that's been around for 20 years. To replace him.
My point is, like, all they have is Brock Lesnar. Like, Drew McIntyre is doing the Castle show, the Clash of the Castle. Dude, if that guy gets hurt, we're going to have another Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar match because they don't have anything. And then, of course, now, we've seen, it's one thing to see it in creative, okay? Because, like, whatever, Vince, he trusts the same guys on top or whatever. But now we're actually seeing the exact same thing on the corporate side. Stephanie leaves. They bury her. Vince is forced to step down. They have nobody, and they bring back Stephanie. John Laurinaitis, oh man, John Laurinaitis, he's got to step away for a while. Well, who do we have to replace John Laurinaitis? Nobody! We go now to Bruce Pritchard, of all people. What is Bruce Pritchard doing this job? And then, of course, you've got, creative. Well, Vince has to step down because of this. So, we're going to replace Vince with somebody in creative. Who are we going to replace him with? Vince! He's not even being replaced. He's still doing the same job. So I just, I think, what would happen if something actually happened to Vince tomorrow? Like he really was gone. I mean, who do you have for creative? You got nobody. Who do you have to replace Johnny Ace? Well, you got nobody. I mean, they got nobody to fill all of these roles behind the scenes and on the actual wrestling show. It's the same people.
It's such a your point is so valid, but the other thing that I was thinking about is, Nick Khan obviously is kind of the dandy of that team, and so far, maybe the only thing that's attributed to Nick as maybe not doing fantastic is they had to pull the pay-per-view out of a stadium and to put it back in an arena. But do you think we're not hearing a lot about Nick, or maybe Vince isn't putting Nick in these positions to fail? Now, he's not a wrestling guy, so he couldn't do some of these positions, but we're not hearing a lot about Nick right now, and I wonder if it's, okay, like, he's got to be still seen as, like, a really, really smart guy, and if we put him in more things and there's blame on him, then that could affect sort of, what Vince wants.
Well, I think that at the end of the day, Nick Khan is going to have his successes and he's going to have his failures. But his successes have been great successes. And so I think as a result of that, he's going to get more chances to fail than maybe somebody who hasn't had a track record for great success with the company. It takes a special kind of person to work with Vince. And Nick Khan has done a heck of a job in that role. So, I have this feeling that he's going to kind of be around for a while. There's sometimes a rapid turnover with a lot of these people, but certain guys, and John Laurinaitis is one of them, and Bruce Pritchard is one of them. There's certain guys that know exactly how to deal with Vince. And I feel that Nick Khan is kind of one of those guys, but also very good at his job. Yeah. So I think that you'll be seeing Nick Khan around probably for a while. Watch him get fired tomorrow for something crazy. I feel like he might be around for a bit.
Andrew, you and I haven't even been able to talk about this yet, but did you have thoughts on all the stuff that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to somebody over there, and it's been the same level of tone where for a while now that there's literally two sets of people. There's like the old guard and the new guard, and I'm not going to say that Nick's hires are a little bit more productive than people that were there for a while, but that's been said to me that the over the last 2 years, the hiring decisions that they've made have been a tremendous asset to the company. We could see already, how a lot of their departments have changed, but this is a very good example of, John Laurinaitis being brought back for head of talent was interesting to me because the conversations around him as being head of talent relations were always terrible. You hear it's been the same. Forget about the joke about hiring the wrong one-legged wrestler, but it's never been super positive. Listen, honestly, if JR was available, I'm willing to bet he would have been brought back. In that position.
Well, one of the things, if I can say something here, Andrew, one of the things is there's a difference between doing your job well and doing your job well for Vince. So I think that's the thing with like Laurinaitis and Pritchard and everybody on the writing team. I mean, you can look at it from the outside and like, oh my God, he hired the wrong one-legged guy and people complain about him and now we've got this investigation. But what he did was he did it the way that Vince wanted it to be done. And it was, Vince, we always talk about yes men and that sort of thing. But, the other thing Vince wants is just like, get the job done and like, don't make my life hard. So like, Pritchard and the writers that have been around longer than 2 months, they're all trained to do it the way that Vince McMahon wants it done. Now, if everybody else watching thinks that it sucks and that they do a terrible job, it doesn't matter as long as they do the job the way Vince wants the job done. And that's what Laurinaitis has done forever. So those are the guys that survive.
But is that what Nick is doing? That's the question. Or does Vince have confidence in him?
I mean,
he thinks that he's totally confident. The whole corporate layout is interesting to me. Obviously we don't see it fall out on TV, but the things that are happening today will set the tone for the next 2 years in that company. And we're starting to see a lot of things unravel here. And, we always talk about life after Vince, like you said, but they really don't have the plan. I guess the plan was always Steph, but her taking a leave threw a huge monkey wrench in this. What still is fascinating to me is that a month ago, we were on the show, and you were on your show, Brian. I mean, we were all together. We're talking about how Stephanie McMahon was being presented as an incompetent executive, which was never the tone. It was always, very protected. Vince's people are very protected. And now she's back in a CEO position. It is baffling to me. How does that happen to the communication? Like what happened here? Who's telling the truth?
Well, I mean, the answer is simple. I mean, I don't know why they buried her, but of all of the reasons that I've heard, like the best one that I've heard is that, well, if Stephanie McMahon leaves, we don't want the stock to crash. So we'll just tell people, well, she didn't do a very good job. We're going to get better people to do the job. And that will, which, it's like preposterous that that's what it would be. But I mean, is there a better explanation for burying her? But I mean, the reason they buried her was because they weren't expecting Vince to have to step down a month later. Like this caught everybody off guard. And then it's like, as we talked about a second ago, they got nobody else. So here comes, which by the way, it's interesting that Stephanie was put in that role and not Triple H. And when you think about all of the different things, the head of talent relations role and, creative, Vince is still doing creative and now CEO and et cetera. Hunter's name never comes up for any of this stuff. And obviously
I asked about that, Brian.
Heart issues and everything like that.
I asked, and I specifically said, I'm like, hey, how about Hunter? Why wasn't he mentioned? And they said it has to do with Steph's long-term corporate, not training, but it had to do with the fact that Stephanie McMahon has been in a corporate role for such a long period of time compared to Hunter that he doesn't have the on-hand experience that Stephanie does with some of the day-to-day that Vince does. That was the answer I was given.
Well, she certainly has more experience, but I mean, you can also look at it like, well, there's Triple H and there's Stephanie. One of them we buried and said they sucked at their job, and the other one we didn't. But we chose the one that we said sucked at their job.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least they did. That's how they do it. At least they didn't tell Triple H publicly, or at least to the public, that he wasn't doing a good job. I mean, they did remove a lot of his stuff behind the scenes. So, but the one thing that you said is it does make you wonder, as far as his health is concerned, if he could do it. But the other thing is, I completely agree with Andrew in that you can put Stephanie in that role. And like you just said about people working with Vince, she's been working with her dad now, for over 20 years. So she probably fits that bill just as well as anybody else does. All right. Bryan, thank you for doing this. We promise we will wait until the 2nd anniversary show to ask you while you're on vacation
to come
back. So, really appreciate you doing this. I know you're.
It's funny. If I recall correctly, the first time that I did the show, I was also on vacation.
Yes, I think so. I think so. Great. So it's just this week. This week is your normal vacation week. So,
yes.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your vacation. I know you're still working a lot, but have fun with your family.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks, guys.
Later, Bryan.
All right. So I've
the great Bryan Alvarez.
The great Bryan Alvarez. I've just received the okay to promote our second guest who's going to be joining us in about a little bit less than 15 minutes.
Nice.
Our original co-host, Denise Salcedo, is going to be joining us to wrap up the show. So we have a little bit of time between now and when Denise is going to come on. So let's go back a little bit to talking about Forbidden Door because it is the show this week. Let's break down some of this stuff a little bit. Moxley and Tanahashi, how are you feeling about that match? Obviously, as a hardcore wrestling fan, it's kind of a dream match. But do you think it's really that people really see it as like a money-making main event that they're willing to fork out their hard-earned dollars for?
Well, let me ask you this. Did CM Punk Tanahashi do that for you?
I actually like this match better because there's already a built-in story between them. Now, you have to be following the tea leaves very closely in order to tell that story or in order to know that story. And AEW has not done that outside of Moxley trying to describe that in a promo. But there hasn't been any like video packages of all the pieces of this storyline and, Moxley going to New Japan and going into the G1 and wanting to knock all these guys off his list. Like they haven't told that story very well. But me, as a wrestling fan, I do like this match better from the Moxley standpoint than I would have from the Punk standpoint. The Punk one felt a little bit more forced. This one feels a little bit more natural. But they haven't actually presented Tanahashi as this all-time legend and still one of the top wrestlers going today. Like they put him in the middle of the ring with Moxley, and obviously he doesn't speak English very well, so they didn't have him cut a promo. But he also didn't do anything except for get beat up by a bunch of guys who jumped the both of them. Like I don't know how if I don't know Tanahashi, I'm not sure how I see, this guy's a badass. Like he's one of the all-time greats. I don't see that based on their presentation of him so far.
Yeah, I don't know what they could have done. I think some of this is unfortunate timing because the pay-per-view is so quick compared to the previous one, right? They have only X amount of time to build everything. They got hit with unbelievable amount of injuries. Same with WWE. They got injuries too. But AEW, it hurts you when Danielson, your number 2 guy in the company, arguably, CM Punk, your number 1 guy in the company, both are out. Adam Cole got banged up a little bit. You also have, the Jeff Hardy situation happen. MJF is another huge thing because think about who he would have faced on this card, right?
Yes.
I think it should have been Toru Yano. I think that would have been a great matchup. Now I think when all these things happen, it definitely will put. And by the way, and Kenny Omega is not there. This is like that RVD moment at One Night Stand when he couldn't compete, and it was
it's a fantastic that's a fantastic comparison right there.
But how disappointing is that? For the talent themselves too, right? Like I'm not disappointed in AEW because injuries happen, but it is unfortunate timing for everything. Is this the show that I wanted to see? No, probably not. It wasn't the show I want to see, but I'm going to watch it and it's going to be a fantastic show. And the matches, it's going to be great wrestling. Now, I'm more so than the pay-per-view. I'm curious what the Go Home show does viewership wise. Because last week, those were atrocious numbers. Dave Dave has, you know, a whiteboard out trying to connect all the dots as to why their numbers have been so terrible the last week. But, you know, we'll see what happens this week. I'm as far as fantasy booking goes, we're going to get that. And it really depends on the success of this show. You know, this is a nice little appetizer, you know? This is a nice little, you know, you're seeing matches that you didn't think you would see. You're seeing AEW and New Japan come together, which a lot of people didn't know when it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
They have opportunity to do something great. Now, is Will Ospreay and Orange Cassidy? Is that the match? You know, this is what I'm talking. Like that. Doesn't
give
really
me your true feelings. Okay, I want to know when you.
Oh, you're getting it out of me. I think it's very complicated. I think this is a very convoluted way to put the show together, and obviously this is no fault of anybody. Yeah. I just feel that for the Forbidden Door show, having Orange Cassidy and Will Ospreay in a match doesn't make sense to me. Mm-hmm. Zero. That's a fantastic Dynamite or Rampage match that I would want to watch.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to see that. You know, the Jericho, Minoru Suzuki, and Sammy Guevara, okay, that's fine. Okay.
And it's meant to be an undercard match.
It's an undercard match. Again, it's a Rampage match or a Dynamite match. We've seen Minoru Suzuki on TV. IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, Adam Cole and or Adam Page versus Jay White. Okay, you know what? I'm into that if that happens. It just here's one, right? You got the Fatal 4-Way. The only person from New Japan in this is Ishii.
Yes.
You could have put another person in.
So here's my question for you, and this is an interesting strategy by AEW for this show. Now, this doesn't have to be a full-on invasion angle, right? We've been there, we've done that. There's probably still a way to do that and to be successful, but there's no... There are stakes to some of the matches. Now, there are stakes to Jon Moxley and Tanahashi. Not only is there an interim title involved, but there is also a beef, right? They got beef or at least Moxley has beef with Tanahashi. We don't know if Tanahashi has beef with Moxley, but they could have done something where New Japan comes in and says, we're the better wrestlers, and AEW is like, no, we're the better wrestlers. And you could have had a face-off for some of these matches. Now, what Bryan basically told us is that politically, it becomes really hard to book stuff because who's going to win, who's going to lose. So maybe that is ultimately not something they could have done and that they really, really wanted to. But if there were more stakes to that level, I'm not saying Survivor Series, Raw versus SmackDown, you know, we count up the wins and then we forget about it the next week.
Yeah.
But you could have done something like, let's say they do 2 shows a year, right? And you have the first show is held in the United States and the second show is held in Japan. And you have some sort of wins and losses scenario. And at the end of the wins and losses, at the end of the second show, you have the guy who runs the winning company hold up this, you know, this Stanley Cup-like trophy to say,
sure,
we won. And year one, AEW beats New Japan in this inaugural, you know, international cup. And then next year you do it again. And then next year you do it again. And you're creating a history and you're making this a big deal. No different than the NBA Finals. The Warriors just won their 4th in 8 years. And, you know, we see Steph Curry's star on the rise yet again, you know, because he won this 4th championship. You could create moments like that for this. And again, they may have wanted to do that and it just didn't work out. But ultimately, should there be more stakes for something like this? Or should these just be one-off shows that happen once a year?
I don't think, you know, like the old school line, right? They already got your money. Slow it down. This thing sold out in matter of seconds, or minutes, right? What's the incentive to give you more? You know what I mean? Like, they know it's going to be a really good show on paper. They know it's going to be a great match lineup. They're very much under the, you know, they understand this. So why would they give away Okada in the main event? I don't know. Or you're absolutely right. This could all be a booking nightmare, and you're dealing with two different companies that have their own initiative and their own goals. But why? Do you know why Andrade is not on this card?
He said it's because of the partnerships that all of these different, ultimately the politics, right? Like,
was it the politics? Because him and Ospreay would have been the match I want to see.
Yeah, I think it's the politics with the two,
because of AAA. Yeah,
with the two Mexican companies. I think.
Got it.
Yeah,
got it. I mean, that's silly, right? I mean, that's really silly stuff because it's a TV, it's a show. Which who does AAA get hurt by him facing someone in New Japan on an AEW pay-per-view? What does that do to AAA or CMLL? You know, any whatever it is. Does it make CMLL better?
What if he was going to win the match? Then do they?
What
have
if he was
going
to win the match? Yeah,
yeah. I don't know the politics enough. We should actually.
It's going to be a great show. It's going to be fine. Like, but I
think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Timing of it. I think a lot of it has to do with the timing right after this pay-per-view in Vegas, the injuries. There's a lot of moving parts here. But watching it this weekend, I don't think anybody's going to, unless something a travesty happens, and they could have a bad show. It's possible. They're due for one. They haven't had a bad show yet, a bad pay-per-view yet. So
there's so many good wrestlers, though.
I know there's too many good wrestlers. But I got a message. Andrew, will you be able to explain the political situation in Mexican pro wrestling to us? No, I cannot. That I cannot do.
Yeah, but we need Dave. We need Dave for that.
We need Dave for that. But it's a very unique time we're in pro wrestling. Impact. Let's talk about Impact for a second, right? Mm-hmm. They put on a hell of a show. Slammiversary. Did you watch it? Because I didn't.
No.
No knock at Impact. I purposely attempted to watch the show. My life got too busy when it was on, and I couldn't watch it. I had to go back and watch clips and stuff. But there's so much good wrestling out there. There's so much good talent out there. It's just a matter of like this show. There's not one dud on this card as far as talent goes, but sometimes you can't line things up for a number of reasons, and I think that's what we got with this. We got a great concept. Great match card, but it's not those one or two matches that people were dying to see. But let me say this also, and then I'll end this giant long monologue I'm doing. New Japan has not really had a presence in North America since the pandemic happened. Mm-hmm. Even before the pandemic, they were in a little bit of a decline here as far as North American viewership goes. We got AEW. Omega. There was no Kenny, no Bucks. Ring of Honor felt it. New Japan felt it. So doing this now, if these matches had happened and prior to the pandemic, AEW opens, they do this match, I think a lot of people would say, oh my gosh, look at this, Tanahashi and Jon Moxley. But now I think people have Ring of Honor, New Japan took a step back during this pandemic over the last 2 years where I think some of that is also playing a part.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to you?
No, it does. And as we wait until we get connected here with Denise in a second, I had one more question about this show for you. If Okada shows up tomorrow and you see the Rainmaker pose and he's added to this IWGP title match, making it a 4-way, not a giant fan of these multi-man matches, but does that change the game for you?
If Okada's in a multi-person match, maybe a little bit. I don't know. I would love to see him on the show, regardless what he does. Like if it's a tag, I think it's cool. But I definitely want to see like an Okada singles match, like Okada Danielson.
Yeah,
right. That's a match that I didn't think I would see.
Yep. All right, let's do it. We can continue this conversation with the person who we're bringing in, Denise, our former We're Live Pal co-host, Denise Salcedo. How are you?
Hey guys, what's up? I'm so glad to be back. How are you both doing?
It was like she was in a nice trio, right? You know what this was? It was the Shield moment, right? She got the big call is standing over there, and it's us three standing up in front of the podium. And what does she do? Bam! Right to our backs.
I just left, you guys. I was like, screw these guys. They're holding me back. I got to be a solo star out here. I want to be world champion. Good day. So I just bounced. But no, I'm just kidding. I'm glad to be back, you guys.
Yeah, she's Shawn Michaels and we're Marty Jannetty, man.
I was about to say I wasn't about to put anybody else over.
All right, so everybody knows this face, Denise Salcedo. First off, how's it going? I know you actually spent some time away from wrestling to do real life stuff before you came on today with us.
Yeah, I officially got my marriage license today, so that's exciting. Although it was a trippy experience because we walked in right to the courthouse and we just walked in like normal. So we were just being our normal selves, but like every other couple was like, oh, hey, like touching each other and like so in love. And I was like, what the hell? Like, y'all know you ain't getting married today, right? And then it got very
maybe
awkward.
It was for them.
I don't know. No, they were doing the same thing we were. It was so weird. And then we came out and the woman like outside the courthouse, she started applauding and I was like, oh no. I was like, this is too much. This is too much. I'm too awkward for all of this.
Oh my God.
What a moment. And the fiance, what did he think of all this stuff that was going on? Did he like, we're just getting was he like you? We're just getting this license. What's going on here?
No, he was making fun of me for being super awkward. He's like, you're just so awkward. I was like, yeah, so I know. I'm super awkward.
All right. So obviously you're seeing lots of Denise's work on this channel. She has a show called The Latest, which is kind of like a video package of news that is going on. How do you like doing that show? It feels like it's right up your wheelhouse as far as things that you enjoy doing.
Dude, I totally love it. I was so happy when the opportunity came about, because just, a little background information here. Part of the reason why I left For Life Pal was because I was going to take some more additional opportunities elsewhere. And then when I told F4W, they were like, you know what? No, we're going to offer you some more work over here. And, a little bit of some business negotiations went down, and lo and behold, we decided upon The Latest, and I love it because it's my favorite content to do. I went to school for broadcast journalism, and the number one thing that I was doing in school was creating news packages. And so these are essentially news packages, but for pro wrestling. It's a very quick, here's what's going down, and that's it sort of thing. And I really enjoy doing it, especially because even like the last 2 weeks, pro wrestling news has been absolutely insane.
That is what we call in the business a little bit of leverage. Denise had some leverage there, and she utilized it to do some things that she wanted to do. And I applaud that. It's great job, great work. So Andrew and I were talking about Forbidden Door stuff, and we had Bryan Alvarez on. We talked about it a little bit. But you are somebody, again, Andrew and I were talking about, we didn't watch the Impact pay-per-view. You are somebody who covered the AAA show, Triple Mania. So you're watching a lot of these different promotions. What is your take on Forbidden Door? Are you excited? Are you some people are let down by this build, but what is your temperature on this show?
I get there's been a lot of people saying that, they're not really looking forward to the match card, etc. But I think it's one of those cards where, when there's been so many shows where you have certain matches, right? And maybe they're not, screaming at the top of your lungs, oh my God, this match is going to be amazing, right? But I feel like the matches that have been announced have this massive potential to be really great matches. So even though I know some people may not be completely crazy about the card, I do think that there's so much potential with so many of the matches that have been announced so far. And I think the problem was, or the reason why people maybe kind of don't like the card as much, is because they took a long time to actually announce the matches. And I feel that we really didn't start getting very many match announcements until like 14, 15, 10 days, like around that mark heading into Forbidden Door, because I remember watching the show and being like, man, hey guys, we're 14 days away and we have like one match announcement, two tops match announcements. And so I feel like they just really came a little late.
Yeah. No, I think that's part of the problem here. But, Denise, here's a question for you, right? I know that you went into detail about the political situation with the Mexican promotions.
Correct.
You want to break that down a little bit? Because somebody asked, I made a joke. I was like, I don't have time to get into it. But do you want to summarize like some of that playing a part in this card as well?
Well, it's one of those things where there was a lot of people basically, talking about this. And I feel like there was a lot of blame also put from like the people that were chatting about this on the comments and social media. They were talking about how, it does suck. It's a huge thing that it does suck, right? Seeing people have to get left out of the card because of, this person can't work with that person and this person can't work with that person. But this is something that has been going on for forever. Like, this is a thing. This is an issue. And I recently did an interview with Conan, and, we talked about this. And, he is, the creative director in AAA. And he is a big reason for why there's this, big drama between CMLL and AAA, because you have to go back to their history and how, AAA was formed, etc. And so CMLL has held that grudge ever since. They have held that grudge. And so now, directly, when I was interviewing Conan, he basically told me we're willing to, make business work. I'm paraphrasing because he said it a little bit differently, but he basically said this is pretty much CMLL. I think we're at the point now where, so many years have gone by and so many, different things have happened that AAA is a little bit more open to, burying the hatchet and getting things to work. But CMLL tends to be a little bit more on the, they have a different way of thinking about things, I don't know if you want to say, I don't know if it's like old school, outdated, I don't know what you want to call it, but they just don't want to have that working relationship because they're still upset about, things that happened in the past. And so now it's more so of them not wanting to play ball or be fair, that sort of thing. And it sucks for the wrestlers. It really does. But again, this is something that has been going on for a long time.
See, we didn't even need Dave.
We didn't even need Dave.
Yeah, no.
We didn't need
I wish I could explain myself as eloquently as Dave.
The Denise Salcedo newsletter comes out every Thursday.
We didn't
with
need
like
Dave.
one bullet point of notes.
One bullet point, yeah.
We
one
didn't
note,
need the
that's
Cubs
it.
fan. Amazing. Okay, so I figured we should spend the next, we got 10 minutes left before Lance Storm yells at us to tell us to get off the air. Let's talk about what happened on Friday, because I thought Friday was one of the more interesting nights in WWE of late. Obviously, when Cody came back, that was really interesting. But they had this opportunity with Matt Riddle and Roman Reigns. And the way that I read that scenario is they really, 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 really wanted their fan base, us fans, to think that Matt Riddle was going to win this match. He does the promo early in the show. He's doing it for Randy. He's like the ultimate babyface, promising to win this title. And if I didn't know any better, I might have been hooked on that thing going like, oh, they're switching the belt. The babyface shouldn't lie. I know better, so I didn't expect it to happen. But I think they did ultimately get a lot of their fan base to think something special was going to happen. Now, the special thing that happened was, it was a really good match. Matt Riddle and Roman Reigns were really good together. But the other piece of this is they knew they had this Brock Lesnar thing, and they wanted to maximize the viewership for the Brock Lesnar thing. So we'll ask our special guest first about her thoughts, and then Andrew, want to get your thoughts. Denise, what do you think about? I mean, going back to Brock Lesnar is tired, though it's the best that they got. But did you think Riddle had a chance to win this match? What were your thoughts about how that show was happening Friday Night SmackDown?
Okay, so first of all, I should start off by saying that I'm actually a really big Brock Lesnar fan. And so I'm that person that's always like, yay, Brock Lesnar. And even me, I was like, damn, bro, I don't think I want to see Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar again. I mean, I love the guy. I'm a huge fan. And, I think Brock Lesnar is the kind of star and the kind of talent that garners a certain reaction out of people that not a lot of other people do. Like, he's a big deal and he carries himself as a big deal. And he's one of the few talents that legitimately still gets, that mainstream publicity and whatnot. So anyway, with all of that being said, I going into this match, I thought there's no way. Okay, I was a little bit torn. I thought there's no way that Matt Riddle is actually going to defeat Roman Reigns. But even though I thought there's no way that that's going to happen, part of me was thinking it should happen. It should happen just for it to be a hell of a surprise. But I knew it wasn't going to happen. Like, we're not going to be seeing this major title change on SmackDown. Like, nobody was going to, actually believe that that was going to happen. Now, the match itself was freaking phenomenal. I loved it. They did such a freaking amazing job. And, there was several moments during this match where I really wanted to see Matt Riddle actually get the win, just for it to be a fresh start. But even when Roman Reigns won, I was like, okay, fine, that's cool. That's what I figured was going to happen. Cool. We'll go from there and see what happens, right? But then when Brock Lesnar came out, I thought, oh my God, so we're going back to Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. You could have just surprised me and been like, ta-da, random title change here, and have Matt Riddle win and, do something different. So I think once I saw that it was going to be Brock and Roman again, I thought, oh, they really should have probably done just something totally different and gone with Matt Riddle. So it was something that I think that Matt Riddle definitely has what it takes. I did not like the follow-up on Monday Night Raw either, having him up in that match against Omos and having him lose to Omos. I was not a fan of that, because I think that's part of the reason. Right, it is a step back. It's part of the reason why they don't build new stars, is because, okay, you had a moment here with Matt Riddle and, he loses this match with Roman Reigns, and then afterwards he just loses to Omos. But I get it. They're heading towards a different program with Matt Riddle, but still.
Andrew.
Yes.
You have, when we go back to WrestleMania season, it was Brock and Roman, and you were kind of the one talking us through why they do this match or why they set up this match. It's the biggest match that they have. It's guaranteed to probably get a little bit of publicity to non-wrestling fans as well. What did you think when they went back to this well?
I hate it. And by the way, I agree with Denise. I'm a big Brock Lesnar fan.
Me too.
I totally get why they go back to him. He makes people stop and look. And that's half of the game here that they got about. By the way, Dave just tweeted, Raw did a 1.99. They did 2 million views with a 0.54 in the demo. So, Monday's Raw. Denise, that Omos stuff was so disappointing for me, right? Because you just had Matt Riddle. By the way, my gauge now when it comes to WWE content, it has to do with the kids in my family. That's how I'm gauging who's working and who's not, right? It targets kids way more than AEW does. The programming is a little bit more for children than AEW is. So, listen, I'm 38 years old. What I like is not what they are going for as much as what a 10-year-old likes and how to maintain that 10-year-old as a lifetime fan. That's how they see things. It's not about me. It's not about you. Pundits don't sell out the building. It's families and kids. Every single person in my family that watches wrestling, I was talking to their parents, like my cousins or like one of my close friends, Mike, his kids are really into wrestling. They love Matt Riddle. They thought that he was going to win it. They were so behind it. And I go, this is what wrestling's about. Brock Lesnar came out. They lost their minds for Brock Lesnar. So sometimes we have to remove ourselves from the scenario and say, listen, who is this product for? Who was it for when we started watching wrestling? It wasn't. I know that we fantasize about, go the Sportatorium, and we talk about the Cow Palace and going and seeing, these matches. You hear it all the time and how wrestling has changed. But wrestling was always targeting kids. That's how you get into wrestling. 35-year-olds don't all of a sudden change a channel and say, oh my God, who's that guy? Brock Lesnar? I'm going to watch wrestling now and become a fan. They are doing a very good job with the Riddle stuff. They're setting it up. However, when you have a guy like him, you just made him in a main event of SmackDown facing Roman Reigns that doesn't defend his title ever, right? It's a special moment to see that title defended on TV. You can't have him go the following show and wrestle in a nothing match against Omos. It makes zero sense to me. Zero sense when you end up doing it that way. I don't know, two different booking teams, two different writing teams. I don't know. That is the most disappointing part to me, because they created something really cool and then they just took it away and made you forget about it. That's all I'm hearing today about how Riddle and Omos had a match.
Yeah.
Nothing about how he challenged for the title and had a very competitive, great match with the guy right now.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. And I had to let my feelings out, when I was talking about Raw and Omos, because it was just not something that I think needed to be done on the show.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, we're going to shut this down here in a second, but Andrew, you mentioned the Raw ratings. So this basically means that for WWE, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? Because all this stuff with Vince being in the news shows up on SmackDown. They have a great title match on SmackDown, and that actually correlates into Raw doing a really good number for them. So that's actually amazing. Some of that is obviously the Roman Reigns stuff. I'm sure that trickles over. The Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar stuff trickles over. But essentially they utilize Vince's bad publicity to bring their ratings back. That's kind of tremendous. It's kind of brilliant if you think about it in this like really perverse way.
Yeah, anything get away from the corporate situation right now. That's how they see it. Listen, Vince is always going to be a draw in that company, right? And what did he do? He did nothing. He came out, went and then that was it.
He almost tripped a couple times.
He almost tripped a couple times. Yeah.
He did that big leap off of the steps, though. That photo has been going all over Twitter account where he's just like.
Oh, dude. I saw one. Somebody made a video of him on a trampoline, and then he's doing flips. And all I could think of was, God, if Vince McMahon could do some sort of flip off the top turnbuckle at 70-something years old, he would.
Oh my God. Let's think about the stunner that we just saw at WrestleMania. That was just terrible.
That's why I said if he could.
It was horrifying.
What about the fall from, remember he had to show Rob Gronkowski how to fall? You remember that video?
Yeah.
Yes.
From WrestleMania.
Listen, that stunner was no worse than the stunners he's taken in the past.
I think that one it was definitely the worst one, for sure.
His legs collapsed in like a weird way. So
I was watching this and I'm like, he's gonna F that stunner up so badly, and I can't wait for it. And he did. And you know what? Whoever that guy is that edited that clip into looking like $1 million, I hope they recognized him. I hope they recognize how fantastic this man is to be able to do that.
Not all heroes wear capes.
Denise, give us your schedule for the rest of this week and all the stuff that you're doing before we get out of here. Because, Lance is going to be in my ear in 1 minute.
Oh, crap.
Okay,
we got a minute. Lance is going to yell at us.
Just really quickly, Twitter and Instagram @_ Denise Salcedo. That's where I promote all of my shows. There's a big giant graphic that you'll find on there for that. So, and just Speak Now Pro Wrestling Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
So you're coming back for NXT. Okay, we do have like 30 seconds. Okay. Are you still having fun doing this show on NXT? Because a lot of people have given up on NXT.
It depends on what week you ask me. There's some weeks where I'm like, all right, this is fine. And there's some weeks where I'm like, why did I take this? Why did I take the show? I need to retire.
That's like me doing the watch-alongs, Denise. I say that to myself. Hour 2, I'm trying to find a way out.
There you go.
It depends on the week that you ask me.
Denise, so thankful for you to join us. I booked her out a while ago so that she would be available, and she was available. Thank you for doing this. You're a busy woman. You're the what did we call you? Hardest working woman in wrestling media. So thanks to Denise. Thank you to Bryan Alvarez. For Andrew Zarian, I'm Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.